rotation. So on the way back, we traveled with the Earth's rotation, which meant, he's thinking, which meant we took off at sunset in England and we landed at sunset in America. It was like a 7-hour sunset. Pretty cool. So I kept my blind open in the window, halfway open the whole time, even when my children were sleeping, so that I could see that light. And I could watch the magnificent sky, the downy waves, and that were the clouds, and the bursting trail of light. It was like a road of light, like a pathway of light. It was constant, and it was guiding. It was really beautiful, truly and genuinely beautiful. And you would think that in the face of that epic glory, my fear would have been lifted. Between my Holy Lamb cross and my billionaire televangelist and the unspeakable beauty of the colors of the sky, you'd think that I would have achieved an incredible state of bliss. That fear should have fallen away from me like a plane lifting up off of the ground. No such luck. It did not happen. I was still afraid. And not only was I afraid, I felt really bad about it. I felt angry at myself. I felt disappointed with myself, like a real spiritual failure. I wanted to be someone without this fear. A real person of faith wouldn't have a fear of flying. Insert your fear there. Really, I was thinking, what's wrong with me? That whole trip, I kept my eye on the sunset light. And it makes me think of the reading from Exodus, where the Israelites are traveling in the wilderness. And the Lord went in front of them in a pillar of cloud by day to lead them along the way, and in a pillar of fire by night to give them light. Neither the pillar of cloud by day nor the pillar of fire by night left its place in front of the people. Do you know what happened to me as I watched that light lead? I didn't have an instant healing of my fear. Instead, I had this feeling, this felt sense that my fear was okay. A sense that it was okay to be afraid, that it isn't ungodly or a crime or a sign of such failure that I couldn't give you anything today or give anything to the many people I minister to. In a strange moment, I had both fear and peace. I had terror and comfort. But, and here's the key thing, that light and that peace was not mine. Just like that pillar of fire wasn't created or sustained by the Israelites, I didn't make the beautiful sunset light. And in that moment, I didn't generate my own peace. I didn't generate it from deep breathing or from meditation or from a positive thought. It didn't belong to me. When I knew that my fear didn't make me a broken person, it seemed to me that the peace and the faith that I lacked were being taken care of by others. And let me tell you what I mean. Have you ever heard the expression, I have enough faith for both of us? Have you heard that? I said it myself countless times to friends and to acquaintances, people who are going through really difficult, terrible, disheartening trials, people who really feel like I don't have an ounce of hope. And I have said to them in those moments, you don't need to believe. I believe enough for both of us. If your faith is weak right now, that's okay. I have faith for two. I felt like this when I looked at that light, as if the light were telling me this exact message. And I felt that then as I looked at the face of Joyce Meyer, that it was okay that I didn't feel free of fearlessness. She had enough for both of us. You know, in this story from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 4, lines 35 through 41, this is the well-known story Jesus stills the storm on the boat. And this story is also in the book of Matthew, and it's also in the book of Luke, which means from the scholarly perspective that this is probably the historical Jesus. Probably something that happened in some way in real time in history. But it's also a very powerful and potent and dramatic tale. They're on the boat. A great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat, so the boat was already being swamped. But he, that's Jesus, was in the stern, asleep on the cushion, and they woke him up and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" He woke up and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." Then the wind ceased, and there was a dead calm. So for today, just totally forget about what Jesus did, which was so awesome, and think about the disciples. The disciples were totally terrified. And those were the disciples. Those people spent real time with Jesus. They didn't have to read 2,000-year-old stories and take a leaping jump of faith into the abyss to believe that he existed. They were like eating with this man, hugging this man, hanging out with this man. He was a real-time, actual person. Consider what that must have been like. And then consider that even with all of that, they were afraid. You know what? That fear makes me feel a lot better about my own fear. Whose faith got those disciples through the terrifying moment? Whose faith? Jesus's. He stilled the storm. The spiritual life is not an invitation to instant perfection. It wasn't 2,000 years ago, and it isn't today. It's a summons to lean on the sustaining infinite. In that moving psalm we read today, Psalm 27, it says, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid?" Truly the light of God is the pillar of fire that guides us in the wilderness, and it has many expressions. It is in those two people who gave you this cross, and it's in the face and the teachings of Joyce Meyer. And you'll hear it when we sing Godspell next. There's a line in Godspell that goes, "We all need some help to be fine." It's in Godspell also. We all have fears. Yours probably aren't the same as mine. You know, there are a few people who don't have fears, but most people are afraid of something. And perhaps yours is a financial fear, or a social fear, or an employment fear, or you fear or worry over somebody in your family, or maybe over the world's problems. Our fears can range from the biggest, like the fear of death, to the less big, the fear of public speaking, to the very small fears that we have, or worries during the day. Having fear is not a failure, and when you have it, look toward the light. Sometimes the light will be sleeping, like Jesus was, and you're going to have to go wake it up. And maybe that means you're going to tell somebody about it, or talk to yourself about it, or shake the situation up in some way. Sometimes you're going to have to wait on the light. As it says at the end of Psalm 27, "Wait for the Lord. Be strong, and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord." Sometimes another person, maybe even an unexpected or unlikely person, like a TV evangelist, will be that light and shine for you. Or maybe it will be the friend who says to you, "I have enough faith for both of us. My faith will carry us through this trial." These lights are around us all the time. They are as present and continuous as the sunset that glow by my window on the plain. If you don't feel you have sufficient faith now or in the future for a situation in your life, others do have